So Final Fight is one of the greatest arcade games of all time, and it definitely inspired a lot of beat 'em up games afterwards. And when it came to home ports, there was really two popular ones. One on the Super Nintendo, and the other was on the Sega CD with Final Fight CD. And since Final Fight was originally an arcade game, it kind of makes sense for us to play Final Fight CD on our arcade. So let's go ahead and check it out. So one of the things that you'll notice right away with the Sega CD version is the fact that it actually has voices, as you can hear here. And the addition of this additional voices, it is kind of corny, but it really gives it that whole B-movie type feel, and I enjoy it myself. And the Sega CD version also has additional cutscenes that even the arcade doesn't have. And we'll go ahead and look at some of the scenes it has in the intro.
Jessica was kidnapped. Jessica? My sweetheart since childhood.
The mad deer must pay. She's my friend too. Count me in.
So when it comes to the Final Fight CD version, there's also a time attack mode which doesn't exist anywhere else. But let's go ahead and start the game, because that's the whole reason why we're playing this, is because we want to play the arcade. And one thing I immediately love about the Sega CD version is the fact that this has all three characters. It is two-player at the same time, and it's really faithful to the arcades, which the Super Nintendo really wasn't. I mean, even though the graphics look great, it just didn't have everything else that I love about the arcade. And wow, the graphics here, I think they're really awesome, especially considering the limitations of the color on the Sega systems. But the Sega CD is definitely a more capable hardware, and the sound on this, man, just listen to the sound, it's so different. It has this like rearranged mix that you won't even get in the arcade, and I actually prefer this. But going back to the graphics, I mean, this is really incredible. And honestly, if Sega would have put out more games like this on the Sega CD, I know it would have been a lot more popular. And the actual gameplay, it's really spot on. I am thoroughly impressed with what Sega was able to do. And for this version, Sega was actually the one who did this conversion and not Capcom. This is really similar to what Sega did with other arcade ports like Strider and Ghosts and Ghosts. Oh man. Yeah. And there's so many things that this just does right. And this is what I think all of us wanted for a port, is that you get as close as possible to the arcade. And it's definitely understood that you won't get the same level of graphic or even sound quality, but in this case, since it is CD, the sound quality is better. But the way that the programmers were able to get so much more out of this Sega hardware, the Sega CD and Sega Genesis hardware, is really amazing if you actually think about it. The characters are large, animation's fluid, and even though the color palette's lower than what it has in the Super Nintendo, I still think this looks better than the Super Nintendo version. It's just so sweet. And having such awesome music and sound effect, which is better than the arcade actually, it's just really just icing on the cake. And honestly, if they had the same arcade graphics and then the Mega Sega CD music, this would have definitely been the best version of Final Fight. And it's a shame that this version really wasn't, you know, ported to anything else. I would have loved to see an updated or even a remake of this with modern graphics. But the sound and music, I think they could just keep it the same, because it is so awesome to hear this, where it's familiar but it's remixed in such a way that it's just really great to listen to. Man, I really enjoyed the subway stage. Wow. Man, the rearranged music on this stage is so awesome. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have all 3 characters in the game, you know. Whereas with the Super Nintendo version, you only had Cody and Hagar, and there was only 1 player. And then there was a Final Fight Guy version, which included Guy. But having all 3 2-player co-op right out of the gate, definitely the way to go. Oh man. Oh yeah. Take that. And some of the background details, they are different. Definitely more limited to the arcade, but not too much, you know. Oh. And the difficulty on this, you know, it's not as hard as the arcade. But it's also, you know, not a walk in the park, especially if you change the difficulty levels. Oh man. So awesome. There it is. Pick up knives as well. Oh, most of the times I don't really pick up any of the other weapons besides the knife. Oh. Okay. All right. And I'd say it's pretty impressive how many large characters they're able to get on the screen at the same time. And some of the food items were changed, like you don't have alcohol anymore. That's so funny how they considered that a power-up, but it's not on here. And as far as I know, at the time of this video, there is a Mega Drive or Sega Genesis port being done by some indie developers that gets it even closer to the arcade, but it doesn't have the Final Fight CD soundtrack. But the graphics and the characters and everything else is even closer to the arcade than this. And even playing this with the arcade stick, it's like playing the arcade actually. So if this Final Fight CD was able to come out to the arcade, it would have been perfect, because that's really what it's meant for. And you could really tell that the developers of this love the arcade version, and they brought a fantastic experience and improved upon it. So after you listen to this new remix tracks after a while, you get used to it, and honestly, it's gonna be hard to go back to the original soundtrack as good as it was. I like this one so much better. And since it is a CD, you're able to get all the sound effects in here. And so the punches and stuff just sound so much better. The voices are clear. All right. Oh. Yeah, 2-player on this is definitely fun. I used to remember going to the arcades, like anytime I saw this game, I would play it all the time. It's very fun, easy to pick up. And even with, you know, a few quarters, I could play for quite a while, because it's a very easy game overall when it comes to the play mechanics. And it's just super fun, you know. And of course, before this, it was Double Dragon for me, but this is definitely the superior game. And you know, all the sequels that they had on Super Nintendo, they were just, they were okay. I guess Final Fight 3 was alright, but definitely none of them compared to the original arcade. Alright. So they changed his name. His name is Sodom, but in this version they call him Katana. So I hate the fact that every time he falls and then he gets up, I have to like dodge his up. So let's go ahead and bring in Hagar. Alright. And Hagar's So slow, but he is fun, and some people prefer playing Hagar, you know? Just like the dudes Zangief on Street Fighter. They're very similar in that case. Oh man, I almost had him. Come on, one more. Well, he's dead now. Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the time attack mode, because this is the one feature that none of the other versions of Final Fight have, including the arcades. And so this is really simple. It's basically beating up as many of these characters and staying alive for as long as possible. And that's definitely a new background. Looks like the San Francisco Bridge to me. Oh yeah. So it looks to me like maximum amount of enemies I can have is maybe 4 on screen at the same time. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a simple type mode. And so that is it for Final Fight CD Arcade. I would say this is the best home port for consoles. Besides the actual arcade itself, this is an awesome version of it. And I would still say, as I said earlier, the music here is the best, even better than the arcades. So if you actually had any thoughts on Final Fight CD or any of the Final Fight games, be sure to leave in the comments area below. And if you did want to see more of my retro game reviews, thoughts, tips, I do have an entire playlist. I'll leave that in the description area below. For serious YouTubers, check out TubeBuddy, the premier tool news at geekoutdoors.com. Get more done today by checking out the affiliate link in the description area below.